Well, hello again, everyone, and welcome to this latest webcast that we're bringing you from Travel Weekly as part of our Roadmap to Recovery series. And I'm delighted to be joined today by Giles Hawke, who is the Chief Executive of Avalon and Cosmos. Welcome, Giles. We've got Emma Coulthurst, who is a travel commentator and expert at price comparison site TravelSupermarket. So welcome, Emma.
Hi, Lucy.
Hello, and finally we've got Gemma Antrobus, who is of course the owner and managing director at Haslemere Travel. So hello everyone.
Hello.
Thank you very much for joining us. We brought you together the day after we've finally seen the findings of the government's global travel task force. They've released their report yesterday. It was quite detailed, there was a lot in it, but I guess the key finding was around this test to release scheme, the test on day 5 and then release on receipt of a negative test. And I wonder whether that's moved the dial for you in travel, and whether well, Emma's already shaking her head. So let's go to you, Emma. What do you think that news will, what impact will that have on the travel industry?
Well, I think from the package holiday industry, it would, you'd think, listening to our friend Grant Shapps yesterday morning, you'd think, oh goodness, I can travel again. This is really exciting. But it was one of those announcements again that was so full of PR and spin. But obviously the reality is that this is applying to red list countries such as Mexico, Cyprus, Egypt, countries we would love to be going back on holiday to, but currently we're being told we can't. And so, yes, you might be able to book a flight there now and go against government advice, but there's the FCDO advice in place. And you just sometimes feel with Grant Shapps, you need someone just to explain what he's saying afterwards, a bit like his announcements on the Thursday night for Sri Lanka being back on the list. But as we know, the borders are closed for Sri Lanka, so we might get excited, but the reality is that we can't travel there on a holiday at the moment. So I think, look, it's good. Testing will have to come down in price now. And we're going to have to see those prices coming down. And they actually seem to be coming down in price yesterday, which suggests to me that they're very high in price and they should be a lot less than they are. And that can only be a good thing for those destinations on the travel corridor lists. Although I hate to call them travel corridors because they're not really, are they? But those countries that we can go to, we should be able to see testing come down, because who would book a holiday at the moment thinking, will I get the test result back in time? And actually the test is costing me nearly the price of my holiday. So look, it's the start, isn't it? But it's just the start.
Okay, all right. Interesting views from you, Emma. Let's bring Gemma in. Do you, the test on day 5 then, is that good news for your customers? Do they see that then as something that, okay, we will now book, or is it still very much?
So I would probably disagree with Emma in a certain sense, because when you're actually selling travel, what you need to have is positive stories. And this for us is probably the most positive thing we've had in months. And being able to talk to clients and say, you know, this is going to be possible. They all realise that there are more restrictions with taking their holidays now than they've ever had before, and that they're not going to go away quickly. But of course, we've been in a position for, 9 months now when many people haven't had a holiday. And with Christmas coming up and many people having maybe friends and family in Europe that they want to see, this all of a sudden makes it achievable, and they can still get their children back into school for the start of term, rather than having to quarantine them at home for another 14 days if they spend Christmas with granny and granddad in the south of France or something, and then keep their children at home for 14 days. So whilst it's not going to solve everything, and it is the first step in the right direction, I do think it's a very positive story that, as a client-facing business, we have to absolutely champion. And I've just written a web piece for our website, which I'll send out to clients tomorrow, just explaining it, just a quick Q&A about everything. And it doesn't paper over anything and make them feel that this is, going to solve all their problems. But what it does is it gives them the hard facts. They do still have to pay for this. It is a cost they will have to incur. But like travel has evolved over the years, there are other costs involved with going on holiday, except for paying for your package holiday or your different elements. We always have to have travel insurance in place. Many places have to have visas. You know, in certain countries, you have to have different inoculations, or you have to pay for malaria. This is at the moment just one of those things. And I think if we explain it in the right way to clients, they accept it as part of being able to travel again. And, you know, when we have the vaccines, it will be, you know, the miracle cure, we hope. But until then, it will be this stage process. And I'm very pleased that we've got to this point. And I've had clients say to me, well, I wouldn't quarantine for 14 days, but I would for 5.
Okay, all right. So you see it as, you know, a positive step in the right direction. Let's come on to the cost of it and vaccines in a minute. But Giles, I just want to talk to you about, you know, the clarity of this, because it's a test on day 5, and then but you have to have this negative result. And of course, we're still not clear whether you need a PCR test, which would obviously have to go to the lab, which could be up to 48 hours from the point at which you drop it off, or are we going to get to a sort of a more rapid test, and therefore it's, you know, it could be a lot longer than 5 days. And so I think that is possibly where some of the confusion and again lack of clarity is for consumers.
Well, I think there's a whole range of issues here. To me, it's the start of something positive, but what it hides is the fact that, as Emma referred to, these travel corridors, because right now you can't go to France. So even if you could come back and quarantine for 5 days, the FCDO advises against all but essential travel to France or wherever else it might be. So while we've got a hokey cokey with the travel corridors, the only people this benefits are people who go away to somewhere where the FCDO say they can go to, and whilst they're away, the advice changes. Apart from that, nothing changes. If the FCDO advice says you cannot go to France or advise against all but essential travel, if you then go to France, you risk your travel insurance not being valid, you risk not getting repatriation if there's another sort of disaster, because you are going against FCDO advice. So actually, it masks, you know, it's a lovely headline, but it masks the reality, which is you can't go to the places where the FCDO say you can't go unless you want to take a massive risk. So it's just a bit of a lovely red herring.
There are insurance companies now saying we'll cover you for going away to places that are on, you know.
But FCDO advice is what every tour operator has to work by.
Yeah.
I cannot, as a tour operator, send people to somewhere where the FCDO say you shouldn't go. I'm not allowed to. I'm not allowed to by law, and actually it'd be wrong to do so. So whether someone's got insurance or not is frankly irrelevant. And I think this is Grant Shapps, and the issue here is Grant Shapps and the travel, whatever they're called, the Global Travel Task Force, do not understand travel. Most of this is centered around inbound travel. They're talking about inbound groups. They're talking about inbound short business trips. They're not talking about leisure travel, and they're not actually really talking about outbound business travel either. They're talking about inbound travel, because to them, the travel industry is UK travel, i.e. things that you can do in the UK, and the aviation sector, and that's it. And actually, I mean, at one level, from a consumer perspective, there's a positive feel around this, but the reality is it's complete rubbish, and it doesn't help anything. Not if you're going to follow the letter of the law and letter of the advice of the FCDO.
Yeah.
And if any of us who ignore that, we would be pilloried by the press and by consumers for saying, you sent me somewhere where I wasn't allowed to go.
Yeah. So really, you just pointed out that you don't think it's really beneficial to the leisure traveller, and it's much more of a play really for the business traveller. And I guess VFR, you know, Gemma, you mentioned some people wanting to go and visit their family over Christmas. So I guess it is a benefit for them.
No, because it's still FCDO advice. You're still going against FCDO advice. And every bit of travel advice, whether it be from ABTA, whether it be from CA, whether it be from tour operators or from travel agents over the years, has been we shouldn't send or encourage customers to go where the FCDO say don't go.
Yeah.
You know, when there was FCDO advice saying don't go to Iraq because of the Iraq war, you'd never have sent someone there. So how you can say, well, this bit of FCDO advice doesn't matter so much as that bit of advice, it's then starting to become really judgmental and saying, well, you can ignore this because, you know, this is COVID or this is something else. At what point do you stop?
So, I mean, I kind of know your answer to this already, but I'll ask it. I mean, we were all building up quite a lot of hope for the findings of this task force.
I wasn't.
Were you not? Okay.
Yeah.
So do you feel, I mean, I'll come on to Emma, but do you think the industry would feel a bit let down then? Because well, we had nothing else to look, you know,
Well,
I know you say
the answer is to align this with removing these stupid travel corridors that do no good whatsoever. So if we're going to say, and then all you need to do then is you say, right, we've decided that this country is on a red list. Therefore, when you come back, you need to do 5 days quarantine, then have the test. If the two are aligned, if the two are aligned, then you've got something really workable and you've got certainty. At the moment, one of them completely counters the other, so there's just no point having it.
But I think the indication in the report is they're saying that they're hoping to get to this more rapid testing, and once that is in place and successful, you know, and credible and all the rest of it, then that's when they would be able to lift quarantine. So that's what you're saying, is that's the point at which we need to get to. Emma, you're nodding.
It's a turning point. Yesterday was a turning point. The actual announcement wasn't going to move the dial, as you were asking us. But what will happen now is, as you say, that's exciting. The idea of coming back and being able to have a quick turnaround test. And I think a bit like in Liverpool, the idea is that we'll be able to do that on return. And then people will book, because there's so many package holiday makers out there who say, I can't risk losing a day's pay. So they can't book at all at the moment with the risk of quarantine, or if they do, they're risking their jobs. So we get to a stage where they know that they can come back, and if they keep testing positive for 7 days in a row, yes, brilliant. They haven't had to quarantine at all. And oh, Giles, I'm just going to agree with you for the whole of this, I think, but I totally agree. We need to get rid of the FCDO advice for some countries. I travelled most of the summer, and I was in Crete. I was in the southwest coast of Greece, and you know, there was nothing in any way that made me fear travelling. I had the most amazing experiences, and I think some people, the government's made them think that they shouldn't be travelling anywhere at all, even when the FCDO advice isn't there. They think travel's a bad thing. But I think we need to get into a place, don't we, with cheap testing, where actually going somewhere where I live in northeast London, the rate's really high, and where I was in Crete, that, you know, there was hardly any cases of the virus. So we need to get into a position where, you know, testing allows us to travel more, and there aren't these silly blanket quarantines in place and an FCDO advice against travelling.
Are you seeing that, Gemma, that the current regulations and the sort of how strict the government is being, is that now making customers really concerned? I mean, I know you've got a lot of people who are just desperate to get away, but do you see some of that it's actually having that negative effect and making people fearful of travel?
No, I think in terms of our client base, probably the FCDO is the last thing they even think of. And many of them talk to the insurance providers that provide the battle face insurance that provides traveling against FCO advice. That is not my choice to make for them. That is their choice to make, whether they want to travel and have that type of insurance in place. What will happen though is people will make their own choices, whether they book through a travel agent, a tour operator, or they do things independently. And if they make these choices over the coming months of, we'll give the example of visiting Granny and Granddad in France for Christmas, and they do that and they quarantine on their return, that will start to spread through their own family connections, through their friends at school, or through their employees and colleagues, and that will start to get people to thinking about it's okay to start traveling again. And that's where the position that I come from is I completely agree about the FCDO advice. It is utterly ridiculous. It makes a mockery of the entire system to use it in the same comparison as we did against the Iraqi war, and now we're talking about somewhere whose levels of COVID are, a fraction of what we have here. It's just insane. But what we need to do is we need to see people traveling again. And this happened over the summer. People went on holiday again when the restrictions were lifted, and their friends and family started to see them traveling safely, and then thought, actually, I could probably do this, and this is positive. And whether that makes a difference for people traveling right now, or gives them confidence to start looking at booking further into 21 when they hadn't already done so, and they didn't think they were going to, or they were waiting that little bit further, that's what we need. We need the confidence to come back. And however that looks like, to me, this is not going to save December. It's not going to suddenly mean everyone travels last minute. There will be some that do, but what it will do is it starts to give people the impression that travel is normal again, or there's some normalization about travel. Now, quarantining after travel isn't normal at all, but 5 days compared to 14 is a lot more manageable than it has been. So in my eyes, it's not going to save us for December, but it is getting attitudes to change. It's getting positive stories out there in the press. And the devil is always in the detail. And we know these things about the FCDO advice. Clients don't necessarily know that. And the people that, you know, they won't drill down into that detail unless they're wishing to travel. But if they start talking, you know, positively about going away, having those conversations with us again, even if that is for months to come, that to me is the biggest takeaway from this.
I think
sorry, Emma, go on.
I was just going to say, even when we get this list of approved suppliers and people start to see that the cost of testing is coming down, I mean, the mid to long term picture for travel is brilliant. When we're seeing, I've got our figures for the last week compared with the week before, and we're seeing bookings coming in for, we were seeing Easter, but April, May, June, July, and it was December, January. Understandably, that's now flipped since lockdown. And yeah, really, you know, really positive. And it's the vaccine announcement. So Monday's Oxford vaccine announcement was just brilliant. We saw 20% more searches on our site compared with the previous Monday. So the vaccines are making the difference as well. And yesterday's announcement, yes, it's going to make people feel more confident that testing is likely to be quicker in future. And, you know, this big announcement from the health secretary that from Easter things should start to get better. It's just a general big picture, isn't it, now that holidays can be booked, and my goodness, so many people are crawling the walls and are wanting to put something in the diary now, aren't they? Literally the first vaccine announcement, my WhatsApp was going crazy with friends and family literally saying, I booked a holiday, and they were doing it within an hour of that first vaccine announcement. I mean, talk about pent-up demand. They were absolutely desperate to book. So yes, it's thank goodness, but we have a positive future ahead, certainly from Easter onwards.
And are you seeing that, Giles? I mean, any sort of change in sort of your trends that you're seeing on the back of yesterday's announcement, even if, you know, customers don't quite understand the nuances around the FCDO advice, or from the vaccine? Have you seen that?
We're seeing, I mean, our customers are very positive that they want to travel. We've talked to probably 60 or 70% of our database in the last 3 months. We've been outbound calling to all our customers, either directly or via travel agents, particularly those ones who've got a letter of credit for the future to say, do you want to cash it in now? Do you want to use it now? Do you want to book? And we did a survey of our customer databases back in late summer. The vast majority of our customers, we're an older demographic. We provide escorted tours, river cruises. They want that looking after that they get on one of our sorts of holidays. So they aren't sort of young and carefree travellers. They are people who take a much more considered view to risk. You know, they're in a latter stage of their life. They have very clearly said they want to wait till the vaccine's there before they're going to book. We've cancelled or in the process of cancelling all of our tours, all of our cruises up until the end of February at the moment, because the logistics involved in running our holidays are quite intense. And so we can't just cancel something at last minute or set it up at last minute. So we're looking March onwards for travel anyway. I think the news is good, but customers, and certainly, as I say, again, in our demographic, want certainty. They don't want to know vaguely, well, if I book now, I might be able to travel, I might not. They want to know, particularly given what's happened in the last 8 or 9 months, if I book, I want to know I'm going to be able to go. And I think what's going to make the massive difference for the sort of demographic of people booking our holidays is when the government lay out a plan to say, you know, in January, all of these people are going to be vaccinated. In February, it's going to be these people. In March, it's going to be these people. So when people know, right, by the end of...
Well, they have said, haven't they, by April, they hope to have the vast majority of people vaccinated. So...
Well, but they've said all sorts of things. I think until people see it in black and white and written down, and people know they've got their letter from their GP that says, come for your vaccine on the 1st of February and the 28th of February, then they'll start booking in their droves because they are desperate to travel. I agree, they're climbing up the walls to travel, but certainly the people who book our holidays, they want that certainty. They want to know that when they go, they're going to be safe. And from our survey, we asked 5 things, put them in order of what would be the most likely to get you booking again. And over 65% of people said, number 1, vaccine.
Well, okay, so that's going to be the key driver. Giles, just before I move on from you, you mentioned there the logistical challenges for your business because it's quite involved with your river cruising and your tours. I mean, one of the things we were hoping to hear in the announcement yesterday was some idea of a date for restart of ocean cruising. Of course, there's FCDO advice against Brits taking a cruise still, and that wasn't forthcoming yesterday. I mean, they've talked about being committed to a pathway to restart, but not quite sure what that means. And of course, the cruise industry, as you've just pointed out, you know, they need months in order to get ships back in the right place and crew on board and all the rest of it. So I think there's some disappointment amongst people selling cruise, and Gemma might want to jump in on this in a second, that you still don't know, the industry still doesn't know about the restart of ocean cruising.
I think it's hugely disappointing. The cruise industry, if you look at what Clear have come out with for all the protocols, for all member lines of the Cruise Line International Association, they are going way above and beyond in terms of protocols, of things that they are doing to ensure their customers are safer than ever. And what's really crazy about this is you can go anywhere around the world on a holiday, you can stay in a hotel, you can stay in whatever. You haven't got the government saying you can't do that, it's dangerous, we need to check out every type of accommodation. The cruise lines are being very, very open and very clear about what they're doing. They're fulfilling all criteria they're being asked to fulfill, and it seems very unfair and very disappointing, both to cruise lines not able to operate, but also to travel agents who have customers demanding to go on cruises. There was the announcement, or the news last week, that Royal Caribbean said they were going to do some test pilot cruises, and they had over 100,000 people sign up to say they'd go on them. So customer demand is there, and actually I cannot see what justification the British government have got for having cruise on a do not travel list. I think it's being unfairly picked on and targeted, and it is completely wrong for it to be like that.
I mean, I think in the task force document, you may not have had a chance to read it, but they've talked from Public Health England have said they may consider starting the lifting process of this guide, you know, this advisory against it, when national level is at 3, but moving to a national level of 2. But that's at odds with what we're at, because we're actually moving into a tiered system they've just announced. Yeah. So we're not going to have a national system. So I don't really I mean, I'm asking you.
But you can go on a plane, you can sit in a metal tube with, you know, several hundred other people for 24 hours or whatever. You can go and stay in a hotel with hundreds of other people. And the government aren't looking in at any level, at the levels of what protocols are in place, how they're going to make sure people are safe, how they're going to make sure people get repatriated, not at government costs for doing that. But they're picking on the cruise industry for completely unfounded reasons, in my view. And you know, it seems that the cruise industry can't, you know, is doing so much and is doing everything and is being unfairly penalized.
Gemma, you're nodding. You must have customers, because I know you sell to that sort of demographic that would take a cruise. So what are you saying to customers?
I think what's really disappointing about all of this, and this just highlights that this global travel task force have no idea about the intricacies of travel. And just as Giles has said, they don't understand the difference or the similarities between staying in a hotel and flying in a metal tube as to staying on a cruise. And exactly as Giles has highlighted, throughout the whole lockdown and the pandemic process, I've sat in on more webinars and Zoom calls from cruise lines, mainly purely out of interest, just to find out what they're doing, how they're getting on. And I have been beyond impressed by all of them, regardless at what level they're selling at, you know, from the, you know, your standard cruising and your large ship cruising down to your more specialist luxury ocean liners and river as well. And they have all gone over and above. And I say this to my clients all the time, is that, you know, when they call up and they say, oh, we're thinking about a river cruise for next year or an ocean cruise, you know, do you think we'll be okay by then? And I say to them, you'd probably be okay now if you were to go, because to be honest, the measures that they have put in place, the extra doctors on board, the testing facilities, the hygiene protocols, the cleaning down high touch surfaces every 30 minutes far supersedes what most hotels are doing. And certainly, you know, when you pop into the supermarket, you know, it's far superior to that. So I actually think that it's just a lack of understanding. And, you know, it's great to have this global travel task force. They are moving in the right direction, but they're tackling all the wrong things, like putting in the 5-day and test without, you know, looking at the FCDO advice, because the two need to come hand in hand. It's the same with traveling on a cruise line as it is staying in a hotel and taking a flight. They need to be very, you know, they need to be the same thing. And I just think it's really misleading to make clients fear for traveling on a vessel that sails on the sea or a river, because that's what they're doing by giving that blanket ban, is making them seem that, you know, clients think that something is wrong when actually there's far more right with it. And it's now our job to re-educate our clients.
Yeah. And it goes back to what Emma said about putting fear in people about travel.
Absolutely. I think clients seem to think of it a bit like, you know, there's a case of norovirus on a cruise and everybody's gone down with it within 24 hours. It's not quite going to be quite like that. And I just think that it's a pure lack of understanding.
Well, yeah, and you look at some cruise lines who've already restarted in Europe and have successfully carried 30,000 passengers since August. But Brits are not allowed to cruise. I'm conscious of time, so I want to move on. I mean, one of the other things that was highlighted in this task force document was the government saying they were going to put in place both a tourism recovery plan and an aviation recovery plan. No indication of financial investment, but what do you make of that, and what would you want to see from that, Emma?
Oh, goodness. Well, I mean, I just read about Eurostar this morning. I used to work for their CEO. He's a great guy. I mean, it was just sad to read that they're saying, this airport funding's come out and to help airports, but poor old Eurostar's feeling like it's really missing out and not on a level playing field. So you think something needs to be done there in terms of supporting other parts of the sector. And it does feel like, I mean, I think aviation are good at getting their voices heard. And I was approached about an all-party group, that aviation group that are there to really lobby MPs, and they're really just mostly aviation on it. So let's get heard, and I guess we need to be heard in terms of support for testing. Wouldn't that be nice if the government actually supported the cost of testing to help travel get back on its feet and really cruising again? So yeah, that would be really useful. And the things we've mentioned before, we need FCDO advice. We need the government to start truly communicating where you can go, not just what's on their travel corridor list. But we've been trying that all year, haven't we? I mean, we pick up the pieces, and we have to, we then have to communicate to customers where they can go and where they can't actually still go. So, better communication from the government. But hey, that's on my Christmas list, but I'm not sure I'm going to get it from Santa.
Well, maybe that is part of what the government means by a tourism recovery plan. And I think, they have talked about, promotion of outbound travel, inbound travel, domestic travel. And if they could get some money behind some kind of campaign, I guess would that be welcome, Giles?
Very.
I think it would, but the money behind the campaign and talking about it isn't as important as getting the conditions so that people can travel. It's a bit like, oh no, I'm not going to say it. It's
go on.
Oh, go on.
It's a bit like saying get ready for Brexit, but not telling you what to do. So to go out and say, travel's fine, travel's great, but then not have the conditions, which is I know that I can go and book a holiday or go and book a business trip, and I will be able to go. And when I come back, I'll either have to quarantine for 5 days or no days, but I know I can go, and I know I won't have the SCDO closing the door on me just before I go or while I'm out there. They're the conditions for travel. And the other thing, I mean, I thought yesterday when the global CEO of Qantas said that a vaccination certificate is going to, they're going to insist on it. I think that is brilliant. I think if we can all have vaccination certificates, there are certain countries you can't go to unless you've had a yellow fever vaccination and you've got the certificate.
And you have to show it as you go in.
This to me is the same thing. And do you know what? If you don't want to have the vaccination, you can't travel. And it's as simple as that. And I think, that is what we need globally, because once you get that, you've got the certainty that all the other people who are going to be in your metal tube with you have had the vaccination. So you're not going to catch it from them. When you arrive in the country, the people are going to want you there because they'll know you've had the vaccination. You're not carrying COVID into their country. And when you come back, you're not have any risk of quarantine, but you're going to have proof that you've had it. So to me, I mean, I see that as 4 or 5 months down the line, but that's a silver bullet. And actually, to me, what the Global Travel Task Force should be doing is laying out the roadmap for the next 5 or 6 months to say, when these conditions are met, this is what will happen. When these conditions are met, this is what will happen. And if we get a little delay, we get a little delay. But actually, then you've got real certainty that there's a plan. At the moment, I have no belief that there's a real plan to do. There's lots of ideas of things we could do, but there's no, this is what we're going to do and this is how it's going to work.
Dates and timelines, and you want things to be met, which doesn't seem an unreasonable demand. Gemma, you were nodding there. Do you agree with Giles?
Yeah, absolutely. I've always said since they announced the vaccine that I believed it would be like the yellow fever. and even communicating to clients about it that have asked sort of our opinion on what we think it will look like. And I said, I believe it will be like the yellow fever vaccine. You know, as Giles said, if you want to go to Africa in certain countries, you have to have a yellow fever, and you either have your stamp in your passport, or you carry the certificate with you, or there's some, something tagged to your passport perhaps. But it needs to be that to me seems to be the most logical way forward. If that's what means we can travel freely again, absolutely, and let's work towards it.
Okay, all right, I'm conscious of time. We're coming up to our half hour, but slightly off topic, but because I've got you on, Gemma, we were talking this week about grants that travel agents have, some people have had trouble getting access to these grants because there's been this debate about whether you are, viable businesses, not viable, are you sort of on the list or not, and would you get access to any grants? Have you managed to get any grants? How have you coped?
So our borough council is Waverley, and they released their portal very early on after the announcement, and I applied the very same day and had the money in my account within 5 days. So It was quite a lengthy form. They needed proof of ID, they needed a recent bank statement, and a proof of address. So I can't honestly remember the form that we filled in way back in the first lockdown, but they wanted quite a lot of information. There was a drop-down section to ask what sector you were in, and travel was in that, and then a further one to classify your business, to which I put retail. And then we had 2 sections where you could effectively plead your case of why you needed this. And, I was just very clear and concise about the fact that the only way that travel agents make money is when people travel. So if you impose an international travel ban, we don't make any money. So even if we open our doors, we still don't make any money. Yeah. And I had no objection. I haven't received.
So at a local government level, you've been good service and all the rest of it.
Absolutely.
But I do know many agents that have struggled. Perhaps they've struggled with the form, or perhaps it's a different system, and that's the frustration, isn't it? Because I think some agents have really, really struggled with this. I think
there's a timing issue. Some councils were very late in releasing this, the online portal or the process of how to apply. Some councils were had very few questions. What's your business? What's your address? Apply. Others were like mine and wanted more details. So again, there was no uniform system for it, which again is confusing.
Yeah.
I've spoken to within the ATO family have received them, or have certainly submitted their application.
Sorry, what's your plan for December the 3rd when we come out of the national lockdown? I mean, I guess we're still waiting to hear about which tiers we're in, which will come tomorrow, but what will your plan be?
If we go back into the same tiers that we were in before, we were tier 1. So I'll be back in the office next Thursday.
Okay. And do you think that will make a difference to your sales?
I think it makes a difference to see us open and see somebody in the shop, and that's what builds confidence. The only reason we weren't in the shop was because we weren't allowed to be, and up until the point of the end of October, I was in the office 4 days a week full time, 9 to 5:30, and we were just started to go back into bringing extra staff back in to open up for 5 days.
And a couple of times I was on the phone, I was on one of these calls to you, Gemma, people were coming in to book, so it obviously worked having you there.
It shows that we're alive, it shows that we're there. It's about confidence. Oh yes, I'll just pop into Haslemere Travel, and not everybody that sticks their head through the door comes in to book a holiday. But if I've learned anything over the last 8-9 months, even more so than what I've learned before, it's how you make people feel. And if you can instill confidence in them that something that they don't, you can help them in some way. That goes so far in the way that they talk about you, and they talk about your business, and the way that they want to interact with you in the future. And that positive promotion when you're a travel agent in a quite close-knit town is massive.
Yeah.
So that's to me, if I can be there and someone can knock on the door and they can come in and feel safe and sit down and have my time, I'll do that every day of the week. If it means going forward, I have that positivity in people thinking great things about my business, and they have confidence that when they want to book a holiday and they want good service and good knowledge, that's where they come. Good for you.
But for Giles, for you, I guess getting your sales team back on the road, that's probably not part of your plan pre-Christmas, I would imagine, because there'll be so many different tiers all over the country.
Yeah, our sales team are doing everything by phone, by video, sending deals and responding to agents' requests. But I don't see them going out into shops. And I don't think at the moment, I might be wrong, I don't think they would be particularly welcomed even if we wanted them going out there. I think, you know, everyone's dealing with their own issues. Everyone's dealing with backlogs of bookings and queries. What we're doing is making sure we're very available, we're visible online, we're visible through the social channels. And if someone needs to contact us, we're responding immediately, and we're being very proactive with providing deals and offers and information. But I don't think anyone really wants sales reps coming into their shops at the moment, or even in the short to medium term.
Yeah, okay. All right. Well, listen, I'm conscious of time. I know you have to get away. Really interesting to hear your take, all of you. As we say, a positive step, but it could be much clearer. And so maybe they'll see this webcast. Let's hope that it gets through to them at some point. But for now, I would really like to thank you for your time. So thank you to Giles from Cosmos and Avalon, to Emma from Travel Supermarket, and to Gemma from Haslemere Travel. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank
Lucy.
Thank you.